Hey, what's going on, roleplayers? It's the Bard here, and welcome back to the corner. So as you guys know, I tend to do a lot of character builds. This is something you've probably seen if you've been watching for a while, but something I haven't really gone into is explaining how to actually build a character, how to write a backstory, and what to do to bring your characters to life. So someone hit me up on Twitter the other day and they wanted to know if I had any suggestions to help them write their character's backstory. And like all these suggestions, it gets me thinking. So I thought about, what is it that makes a character good? What is it you need to have a good backstory? And how do you actually go about writing that? A lot of videos say write your backstory, create your character concept, add in certain feats, but they don't really tell you much beyond that. The point is, how do you actually write a backstory? What is it these guys aren't telling you? Or perhaps more accurately, do they not know what to tell you? First point of call is going to be research. You want to do research into the campaign setting that you're going to be in. It's all very well and good saying that your character is going to come from a certain area, but if such an area doesn't exist within the sphere of the world, then it's going to be absolutely impossible to integrate that into the story. This isn't usually a problem with a homebrewed campaign, but if you're going into something like Eberron, Faerun, Kingdoms of Kalamar, Greyhawk, Dragonlance, anything like this, you're going to need to understand the backstory at least a tiny bit. If, for example, I run Dragons of Autumn Twilight for the Dragonlance campaign, what's likely to happen is someone might say to me, "Oh, I want my first character to be a cleric," at which point I have to turn around to them and say, there are no true clerics because of the way the world is set up. The point is, in order to not clash with the world that your DM has created, you're going to want to make sure that you paint some very broad strokes in the beginning. Just before you start writing any backstory at all, say, this is the character I want, this is the route I want to take, this is where I roughly want them to come from, are these suitable? If the answer is yes, then you can start moving towards your backstory. If not, you have to work with your DM to find out what you can and can't do before getting started. I know this sounds like basic stuff, and it probably is to those who've been doing it for a long time, but just make sure you do it, because once you do, you don't have to rewrite an entire backstory. So the first and most important thing to understand in backstory is how the past shapes your character. What are the trials that they've overcome, and what is it that makes them the person that they are today? A backstory can have any number of things that happen within it, but if they're not reflected in the character when you're playing it, then they are not valid points when it comes to backstory. That might sound a little harsh, but you need to understand that your character is the way that they are based on the things that have happened in the past. So when you write your backstory, you want to avoid as much filler as you can. Just keep to the details, the facts. In the beginning, your character is born, and they were born in X place. Perhaps it's a small trading town. They moved to Y place, which is a military superpower, and then enlisted as soldier. That's all you need to say. You don't need to talk about the town, you don't need to talk about the city that you've moved to and what goes on there unless it's somehow relevant to the reason why you started becoming an adventurer in the first place. Mention the location in passing and then mention the event that leads you to become what you are today. If it's easier for you, just use bullet points to state the facts. The only reason you include these individual facts is because they are relevant to what's going to happen to your character in the future. Writing a backstory for a D&D character isn't like writing a backstory for a character in a novel. It's not always going to be narrative. The important thing is that you get information out there. What they try to advise you against in narrative writing is an information dump, but what you're going to be doing as your character for your D&D project, it's going to be a case of you need to get information out there. This shows what your character is, it shows how the character is about to develop, and it also gives something for your DM to hang a story off of. Another thing is just try and keep it real. You want to aspire to greatness. You don't get to be great in the beginning. You're not going to have a backstory where you've managed to slay the legendary two-headed black dragon of Kadan, but perhaps that creature has come in and ravaged your town and you want revenge. This is a much better scenario. In this, you get to have a personality trait. So you might be vengeful, you might just be angry, it might explain why you're withdrawn, it might explain why you're the opposite, why you throw yourself into danger every time, and also it gives your DM something to work with. This is the main focus of backstory, giving your characters something that invests them in the world and gives you something to aspire to in the future. It also gives you the chance to integrate a piece of your story into the DM story. This is why bullet points are so beneficial to you. You're not going to have the chance to sit down at a campfire and reel off your entire narrative. However, what someone might say to you is, why do you come adventuring? And then you've got that quick bullet point that you can always look at and say, I hid when the town was attacked, for example. I was too weak to do anything then, but I'm strong enough now. Whatever, it's just an example, but the point is, keep it short, keep it snappy, and just keep to the facts. Also, it's worth saying, who taught you how to use a sword? Who taught you how to cast spells? Who taught you how to pick a lock? If you include these NPCs as part of your backstory, then the DM can integrate them into the story. Again, use bullet points to really highlight the important aspects of the people that feature in your backstory. Again, highlight those things like how they look, how they dress, what they weigh. Are they old? Are they young? By having details like that on hand, your DM, if they want to, can then integrate NPCs like that into the game, and you can feel connected to the world because something familiar exists within it. So this isn't an absolute must, but this next point is probably worth considering, and it's having a few loose ends. So perhaps your greatest rival, you defeated them but you didn't kill them, and now they're still out there and they're going to come back twice as hard. Perhaps you were on a heist and it went bad. Perhaps you are a spellcaster and you cast a spell but you never resolved it properly and it's been wreaking havoc for a while. Whatever the reason is, it's great to have something, again, that the DM can just hang bits of story off of. This leads me nicely into characters and how they should be played. Now, everyone's got their idea for a character, and I'm not going to dictate to you how you should be playing it, but what I would suggest, and this is always a good idea, the best stories have characters who are flawed, who have something to learn, who have a way to grow and engage. You're not going to be perfect from the beginning, and you don't want to be. No one enjoys a character which has got someone who can do everything perfectly, who gets everything right on their first try. Those characters just grate on anyone and everyone who witnesses them. You watch any film where you have this perfect character, no one enjoys it. No one enjoys it. I'll give you some examples. I love Star Wars, absolutely adore it. Luke Skywalker, absolutely great example of character development. He's young, he's cocky, he's rash, jumps into danger. You know, these are his faults, but he learns from them. And he can't do everything amazingly. He fails when he's doing the training on Dagobah. He loses his hand at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it. But everyone's seen it. But you compare that to someone like Rey from The Force Awakens, and she just does everything perfectly. She can fly a ship perfectly. She can use the Force without any training. She can defeat the Sith Lord at the end without any actual lightsaber training. It's just, I don't feel any connection to the character, and no one will feel any connection to your character if they act in the same way. Everyone needs to be flawed. Everyone has to have a chance to grow. You gain experience to get better. When you're playing the game, the mechanical aspect of experience allows you to do more things, cast better spells, hit more often with your weapons, have special abilities. But the more philosophical aspect is that it shows your progression as an individual. Now, the stereotypical thing for someone to say when they're telling you how to play a character is, don't be stereotypical. However, you have to also understand that stereotypical is not the same as consistent. Your characters want to be unique. Just because your character might be a barbarian who comes from the frigid wastelands of the frozen mountaintop doesn't necessarily mean that they have to act like a barbarian in the stereotypical sense. They might have good table manners. They might be loquacious and eloquent. Whatever you can do to make your character seem more real, all for the better. If you had, say, an elven barbarian, someone might not actually consider them to be really rough around the edges, but still perhaps come from a woodland background. So if you think outside the box a little bit when it comes to developing your character, the thief doesn't always have to be sneaky, greedy. The wizard doesn't always have to be intelligent. The sorcerer does not technically have to act charismatic even though they might have a good score. You might be very bad at talking to people even though you might be physically attractive. So as many different quirks as you can give your character, and as long as you continue to play them consistently, then you're on to a winner. Another just general rule, and we're moving on to more how to play your character. When someone says, I do something, let them play their character as well. So for example, if you've got a rough around the edges character and they say, I'm going to punch the town guard because he's starting to annoy me, you don't want to be the person to say, oh, I stop him from doing that. First of all, it'll probably happen too fast for you to react to anyway. But more importantly, if you stop it, nothing has happened. So they've wasted time explaining what they're doing, and you've wasted time explaining that you've stopped it, and you're still no further forward. Let things happen. Let people play their characters the way they want to play them, even if it gets you into trouble. Because trouble means better story and more interesting scenarios to work with. More interesting things that your GM can then put onto the table for you. If it does get you arrested, then you're going to have to break out of jail. You're not going to get killed or hung just because your character's made a stupid decision, but just try to let story unfold. Sometimes you just got to let the dice fall where they may and introduce a little bit of chaos. Chaos is your friend in these games. Chaos is what makes things interesting. If everything is completely by the book, then nothing of interest ever happens. I know what it's like. You watch a film, you read a book, and you think, why on earth did the character do that? It would have been so much easier to do whatever, a completely different thing. But then you wouldn't have a story. So the point I'm making is, if someone makes a mistake, roll with it. Let it happen. See where it takes the story. If you want to be good at the table, always participate, always be doing stuff. It's a great way to develop your character. But if you are in a moral situation where your character just wouldn't do something, don't just say no, because nothing's happening. You want to be participating. So go along with it, but always be protesting. We shouldn't be doing this. I think this is a bad idea. And when something goes wrong, be like, I told you guys so. But don't ever refuse to participate in anything either. Always be moving forward. I don't ever remember Luke Skywalker saying, you know what, Yoda, screw this, Darth Vader is really dangerous. I could lose a hand here or something. No, he just went for it, didn't he? And that's what you guys should be doing as well. Another great tip to remember is to try to not make a mess of it for the players. Don't go dropping fireballs on them if you can help it. And don't go stealing things from under their noses, because it's not going to win you any favours. If your character is a bit of a slimeball, is a bit of a scumbag, and is just out there to be as antagonistic as possible, try to do it to the villains, try to do it to the monsters, try to do it to your rivals. Try not to do it to your party. It'll actually be even better if you're not doing it to your party, because they will see that you're doing it to all these other creatures, and the fear that it might happen to them will actually make the potential of what you might do that much more realistic. Whereas if you just keep screwing over your party time and time again, everyone's just going to say, damn man, I am so bored. But if they see you doing these really awful things to the monsters, to the villains, they're going to respect it to a degree, and they're going to actually probably be a little bit scared too. Win-win. And finally, being a good player at the table, everything you do should be to progress the story. Just make it happen. Ask questions, follow leads, just pick up on every piece of information you can and start asking questions and moving forward. Every time the game moves forward, the character development moves forward with it. Your character will improve, the party characters will improve, the story will get better, and your GM will key off of that as well, and then they'll make their NPCs much more believable and much more rich and vibrant, so everyone is helping everyone. Hopefully that's given you some good ideas about how you could possibly do your role-playing, how you can possibly improve your character, how you can make your backstory, and just really get you set up for the game ahead. I know a lot of my stuff tends to be geared towards more advanced players, and a lot of the things I talk about tend to involve advanced rules and interesting combinations, but at the same time we've all got to start somewhere as well. So hopefully this will be of some value to those of you who need a quick and easy start to getting your character ready for the game ahead. It's great having the numbers in front of you, but if you don't know how to apply some personality to them, then they're just numbers on a sheet. And half of the game is about how you play the character. I know I've given a broad overview, but if you want some more specific videos about these topics, if you want one that's solely about how to do background, if you want one that's solely about how to do character development, if there's one about being a better player at the game table, sure, you know, just put the comments in the section and I'll have a look at them. Also guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't, get notifications if they're not turned on, share the content to people you think might like it. Why do we have to jump through so many hoops just to see the content we want to see? Anyway guys, with all that being said, I will see you guys next time at the gaming table.